Hello and welcome to another episode of Inside the FLX. I'm Josh Durso and we have an exciting show today as former Geneva City Councilwoman Jackie Augustine joins us to talk about the city she calls home, her time on City Council, and what she's going to be up to now that she has exited the political scene. As always, we are coming to you from the FingerLakes1.com studio in downtown Seneca Falls, and I'd like to welcome Jackie to the show now. Thank you for stopping by.
Josh, thanks for having me.
So, all right, maybe some of the people who've been watching have been living under a rock for the last 6 months.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into politics, the start to finish to where we are today.
Well, the start to finish, it's been 16 years. No. Well, I'm Jackie Augustine. Yeah, I got into city government right after graduating from William Smith College and ran for office. And it was a three-way race for the first ward council seat and won by 4 votes. and then served 2 terms as 3 terms as the first ward councilor, and then moved up to councilor at large, and then decided to run for mayor this past November.
All right, so you were, before we get into any of the mayoral stuff, what was sort of, on Geneva City Council, what was your proudest moment, or what was sort of your, what you would consider your crown achievement over your long term on council?
Well, I don't know if I can identify a single achievement, because you can't get anything done on city council by yourself. I mean, It's a group of 9 people. So any achievement you might have is going to be measured by your ability to bring people along with an idea that you have. So I think that the thing I'm most known for, and the thing I really think was unique to me that I brought to the table, was I took the job really seriously, and so I did a lot of homework. I asked a lot of questions, whether they were always welcome or not, and really just wanted to make sure that whatever we were doing as a group, whether it was something I personally was championing or something that the group put forward, and whether I agreed or not, that we really looked at things thoroughly. So I would hope going forward that that the time on council, maybe people felt that was important and started to expect a little bit more from city council than they might have before. The opportunity to see that it's okay to ask questions, and that really we get better decisions if more people are involved in the decision-making process. So while I was there, I had a blog with Chip Caprero for a couple of years, and that was probably the highlight of my time on council, as far as being able to really move the community dialogue forward, because we were presenting a fact-based point of view about issues in a climate where maybe that wasn't welcome. We got a lot of pushback for doing that. There was an idea that city council was its own institution with kind of its own understanding of how we would operate, and we were consistently asked why we would want to air dirty laundry. Why would we want to speak out online about what was going on? And, well, my response was always, well, let's hope we don't generate any dirty laundry, right? I mean, that's kind of the point. We don't want that to be happening. But I think the idea that it was kind of crowdsourcing city government, right? We would put some ideas out there, and we would allow people to write in and share their thoughts, and then we would continue that discussion at the city council meetings. So even after the blog went away, and after Chip left council, I wanted to continue in that spirit, that if people asked me a question when I was at Wegmans, or if they called me up or sent me an email, I wanted to make sure that if I didn't have the answer, that I was able to get that. And I think that's I'd say that was the hallmark of my service.
So what was that sort of, okay, so one of the really interesting things out of that entire point, and I think, is that you got into politics, city politics, right after you graduated from college. What was that? What was that like? Because I would have to imagine just by merit of your age alone, you caught a little bit of flack, or at least created a little friction.
Yeah, definitely. In politics, not just local politics, but I think one of the frustrations people have at the national level is that there seems to be that you have to take a fairly traditional route to get elected. You've put in your time at a certain level, or you've done committee work, or you know somebody, or you bring a lot of money to the table or something. And college student, single mom isn't really your typical city council person. And so I do think there was a general feeling that I didn't belong there, and what could I possibly contribute? But I was and still am really idealistic, I think, and optimistic. So I just felt like if I did a good job, the way I would approach anything else I'm doing, that over time they would come to appreciate my perspective on the issues. And whether that happened or not, I guess some people did and some people didn't. But I feel like I did a good job. So.
I would say probably most of the people, approximately 1,200 of them in Geneva, would most likely agree with you. Staying on that topic for another minute here, what do you think what's the missing link then as far as getting young voters involved? It's something that's always been kind of interesting to me, and it's just, I'm personally interested, but I know a lot of people my age aren't interested.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things, like, how did you, as being someone who not only lived it but was also serving, how did you kind of look at that or evaluate it when you were in office?
Yeah, I call that the why bother problem. I think a lot of people have an attitude like, there's all this stuff going on, I don't like it, but why bother saying anything? Why bother getting involved? Because there's a sense that even if you say something, even if you bring something forward that really should be taken into account, sometimes it gets ignored, and that can be really demoralizing. So I have always felt that whether I agree with somebody or not, I always wanted everybody to feel that I at least understood what they were saying. Even if I just really vigorously wanted to disagree with it, I still felt there was a place for everybody to at least get that opinion out and to have their say. And I think if you can create that kind of climate, then you'll find people, I think younger people do want to be involved. I think everybody wants their community to be a great place to live. Not everybody knows or wants to contribute in the same way. So I think it really is the job of elected officials to try to figure out how everyone can contribute in a way that feels right to them and that brings something to the table that makes the conversation more robust. I mean, the more people involved in the decision making, the more likely you are to get the right answer.
To that end, automatic voter registration, something Governor Cuomo mentioned this past week in his State of the State address, something you feel should be implemented, something you feel, or even early voting for that matter. Do you think there need to be structural changes that take place to make it a little easier, more accessible?
I do. I feel like it is, it's your right to vote, but it's a responsibility. I mean, these decisions are going to be made whether people participate or not. And they're better when people participate. So whatever barriers you can remove to that participation is going to be better for all of us. So I do support efforts to try to make voting easier. I'm probably one of those people who thinks mandatory voting would be a great thing, but other people would say that's a little too nanny state for them. But I think people need to be engaged, and that's both a push and a pull. You want to pull people in, but you also want to find a way to push out opportunities for people to be involved too.
So, all right, so let's get into, speaking of opportunities in political races, your race for mayor this past November. 11 votes was the difference.
Right.
You were on the losing side of that, but huge impact, I think. From my own perspective, I think you had a huge impact on the sort of course that Geneva is taking now. We'll get to that a little later. But what was it like living through that race in your position, like from start to finish?
Well, it was a little surreal. I mean, I don't consider myself to be a politician, so initially the idea of putting myself out there to run for mayor, I mean, you might think, oh, well, she was already a counselor at large, she'd already done a citywide race, no big deal. But making the jump from city council to mayor really took a lot of time and thought, because it's not so. I mean, you have the same vote. You participate in the same number of meetings. The mayor doesn't actually particularly have any additional powers or authorities, so to speak, but you do have kind of the bully pulpit, right? You have this opportunity that if the mayor has a press conference, people are going to listen. You know, if a solo city councilor gets out on the steps of City Hall and starts saying stuff, I'm sure it would be covered, but it might not carry the same weight as if the mayor says, these are our priorities and this is what our agenda is. So it took me a while to kind of work myself up to envisioning myself in that role, although it seemed to be a lot easier for people to say that that was a good fit for me. But once I decided that that's what I wanted to do, I was really committed to it. Like I could see how that would work. And I also understood that I didn't want to be a solo mayor. Like I didn't want to be just, it's me and I'm going to pave the way and everyone's going to do what I say. First of all, that's not how it works. But second of all, I wouldn't be comfortable with that anyway. So I understood that it was going to be really important to try to put together a slate of candidates who shared a core set of values that would really make the city able to work in a progressive and forward-thinking way and get stuff done. And that's how the Geneva First Party really evolved. The idea was to recruit people from a variety of backgrounds and kind of across different parts of the city, but who shared these core beliefs that facts matter, that people's opinions should be heard, and that there is a good process that will help us get to good decisions. And that's what we did. We put that group together and we ran as a team, and I thought it was important to communicate that when people were going into the voting booth, they were voting not for personalities, but for a set of principles. And overall, I mean, even though I didn't end up becoming the mayor, I still think the election was a great success for Geneva, because I think people really talked about things. People really talked about the issues. They talked about what they expected, what they wanted, what their vision of the city was going to be. And I think what emerged is a good working group of council that, will have to take that up and have those discussions. And I trust that they'll put into place, a good decision-making structure. So whatever comes up.
So to that end, there's been a little bit of talk and a little bit of coverage about the city implementing some boards and commissions that will actually involve residents. And I recall heavily seeing a lot of information, like a lot of that coming from your side while you were in the process of running. Give us your sort of take on that. Obviously, you feel it's time, but as far as where do you think that's going to lead? Right.
Good use of our campaign slogan, too. It was "It's time," so that's good. I'm sure that's what you intended. So, the boards and commissions, I think that you're referencing have existed, and there was a real push last year. City Council is a retreat every year, and the new council's retreat's coming up at the end of this month. But last year's retreat, we did focus on how to get more people involved in boards and commissions. And we implemented an online application process. We actually put out a set of requirements and expectations, because before we just had this application form where you could select the boards you wanted, and it didn't tell you anything about what they did or when they met or how frequently. And maybe any particular expertise or interest you might have. So you're really asking people to go into something blind and commit their time to something without a sense of what would be expected of them or what they would get out of it, and what they'd be contributing. So we changed that and got a much better response, and then got counselors more active in actually interviewing people and trying to match people with boards that fit with their interests. We also tried to relax some of the political requirements so that it didn't feel as though political parties were just putting people on boards, and instead people could approach the city regardless of political affiliation and be fairly considered for a position. Two of the things that I do hope this council takes up that were part of my platform running for mayor that I hope doesn't go by the wayside is I really think the city would be well served by a budget advisory committee. And I think that the city budget is complex. There are a vast number of opportunities, and some creative thinking would really do us well. So I think a budget advisory committee and just opening things up and getting people into it and then getting their ideas would be great for the city. And I also thought a youth council would be a good idea. We have a lot of young people in Geneva who stay in Geneva. A lot of times people graduate and they want to leave the city. But I think more and more we're seeing young people stay in the city. And the earlier you can get people invested in what's going on and improving the community, the better. So I'm still hopeful that they'll take those two things up.
So as far as that improvement you're talking about, one of the things in Geneva that is definitely taken leaps and bounds over the last decade and a half, I would say, is actual downtown Geneva. Talk to us about what that was like. You were in office while all that was sort of happening around you. What was that like?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's been years in the making. A lot of people's effort, a lot of people's vision coming together on that. I think some of the early steps were developing this traditional urban design district, which it's not restrictive, doesn't tell people, it doesn't really limit their options of what they can do with their building, but really it sends the message that architectural features and design and the way a building looks from the street matters. It affects the climate, it affects the atmosphere. It makes people have a different feeling and connection with the city than, if we just... if we're just careless with those kind of things, So I think making a statement that those things matter was important. And then I think helping through microenterprise development and some creative connections of entrepreneurs and available space really started to create a blend of downtown offerings that struck a chord with people that were coming to Geneva. I mean, I like to say that now we are, I've always said we should be the capital city of the Finger Lakes, but even more so now, we're like the culinary capital of the Finger Lakes. If you want a great meal, downtown Geneva is the place to go. And it's just, there's a sense that things are happening, things are growing, and people are finding a reason to come downtown and stay for a while. So it's great.
So downtown Geneva, you can't mention downtown Geneva without also mentioning Seneca Lake. And I know you've had some really thoughtful things you've said before on that topic, but specifically the Crestwood expansion down at the other end of the lake,
right.
Gas-Free Seneca, the founders of Gas-Free Seneca were on the show last week. What is your sort of thought on that polarizing issue, and sort of what is your vision, or what do you hope the vision should be for Seneca Lake to preserve it moving forward?
Well, this week last year, I was in Rochester at a press conference announcing the formation of the municipal coalition against the Crestwood project. So now we have 31 municipalities, towns, villages, counties that are on record with resolutions that we think the project is inconsistent with the economic development strategy of the region, not to mention kind of the health and safety concerns that we have. I mean, those are obviously from the municipal standpoint, I think trying to show that it was inconsistent with the work that we've been doing to rebuild our city and the region, and agricultural and a pristine setting. This project just seems wholly inconsistent, and you've got this outside of the state Texas-based company coming in, and we're assuming all the risk for their operations, and I don't see any tangible rewards that would offset that risk. So Councilor Camera, who's on the city's Green Committee, he and I got involved with this effort to start this municipal coalition that would be officially on the record from Rochester to Syracuse to Ithaca, that to let the governor know that we don't think this project should be approved. So yeah, I have a pretty strong opinion about that.
So you have strong opinions about a lot of things. What do you think the top 3 issues are that residents should care about at this point going forward? It's a new year. What are those 3? Either maybe they're polarizing, maybe they haven't been talked about at all. What are they, or what should be on everyone's mind?
Okay. Well, there are a lot of things on my mind. But I guess the thing that everybody in Geneva should be thinking about, from the top leadership to kids in school, everybody should be thinking about Geneva's position. Like, I think that's the issue. I mean, there's our position in the region. Like I said, I think we're the capital city of the Finger Lakes. So there are certain things that go along with that. How do you preserve that image? How do you cultivate that image? How do you make sure that there's substance to it and it's not just a branding thing? It can't just be a marketing effort. There's got to be something to it. People have to feel it. Our position in the county, we're on the eastern end of Ontario County, and in my view, are the often forgotten city in Ontario County. So I think that from a public policy position, from sales tax redistribution to housing policy, there are a lot of ways in which Geneva is not well served, I guess, by the county administration. So I think that needs to be looked at. Maybe school kids aren't thinking about that one. But then also, obviously, our financial position, because small upstate city, it's no secret that the city of Geneva, between the city, county, and school taxes, it creates a high tax burden. And again, I do believe that there are creative solutions there. The sales tax distribution is going to be one of them that's most immediate, but there has to be a really good discussion about how you balance the things that make people want to come and stay in Geneva and the things those people are willing to pay for. And that's going to create some tough decisions. So I'm on the city's comprehensive planning committee, which I think I get to stay, even though I'm not on city council anymore. Now I'm on there as a resident. And that's our charge. We've been talking about putting together a plan that has a values statement so that you really have a rubric for decision making, because a city's defined as much by what it does and what it goes after as it is by the things it says no to. So I think Geneva's really in a position of trying to figure out, what are our boundaries? What are our limits? Like, what are the things we won't allow? So Crestwood's kind of an example of that. We're not gonna just stand by while a company wants to threaten our water supply and our main tourism asset. So we're taking a stand. We're saying, no, that's not consistent with our vision. But that's
okay. So now you're out of politics. Have any immediate plans to get back in, or is this kind of you're going to enjoy your time now that you have some to spare?
Yeah, well, life's political, right? Like, every day you've got an opportunity to do something for the public good. So I'm not out of politics in that regard. But boy, yeah, I'm have no interest in returning to any of the formal ways of serving that I had been doing. Yeah, I have no political aspirations.
You do have aspirations, though, to make sure that the people in Geneva continue hearing what you have to say. And I was just informed this morning that you are going to be writing a column opposite of my column in the Finger Lakes Times. Any ideas, sort of give everyone a little screenshot of what they might expect coming out of that in the months to come?
Well, yeah, that was super exciting to have the opportunity to write a column. And I did ask if there would be a general mission or set of boundaries, talking about boundaries about what I'm supposed to be discussing, and I was told kind of whatever's on my mind. So, people, you get ready for that.
Yeah, get ready.
I know initially the first couple of things that were immediately on my mind were, and I don't know, are you supposed to preview these? But yeah, so it's kind of the time of year everybody's giving their State of the Union, State of the State address. You mentioned the governor's address, and so I have an idea for kind of a State of the Finger Lakes address. So that was
very cool.
I thought that would always be neat if the mayor did like a State of the City address every year. And then also I've been following this situation in Flint, Michigan with the water supply, and just I just wanted to know, like, not so much how did it happen, because it actually doesn't surprise me that something like that could happen. I mean, in government decisions, I've seen kind of quick money-saving ideas go horribly wrong for years.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know, how'd they figure out that they'd made a mistake? Like, how did that come to light? So those are the things that have been on my mind that people can expect to read about.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thanks for having me. This was fun.
I think we'll definitely be having you back again in the future.
Sure.
So that's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank Jackie for stopping by and remind everyone that next week we're going to have Clyde Mayor Jerry Fremont in studio. He's going to be talking about his village and Wayne County as a whole. In the meantime, though, remember to like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, and check out fingerlakes1.com for the latest news and updates. For Jackie Augustine, I'm Josh Durso, reminding everyone to join us next week on another episode of Inside the FLX.